poor, I tell you that. And they expected me to step a foot on the college campus and not go to the NBA, then we weren't going to be poor for long, I tell you what. That's a fact.
Welcome to SI Now. I'm Robin Lundberg here with Amy Campbell. That, of course, was LeBron James, who completed a month where he averaged a triple-double and became the first player in NBA history to tally 30,000 points, 8,000 rebounds, and 8,000 assists, talking about a level of basketball where he registered no statistics. College. LeBron also described the NCAA as corrupt and said top players aren't being brought to programs for an education, but to get them to a Final Four. Considering his career and who he is, how much does LeBron's voice add to this conversation?
I think it's a huge voice. It's LeBron James, the best player in the world, one of the best ever, who is using his voice to speak against lots of things. I think this is definitely has been a hot topic for a long time and still is. And LeBron is a guy who continues to take matters into his own hands. We saw how he left Cleveland the first time, went to Miami, went back to Cleveland. He's always made his own decisions, and I think putting the power in the hands of the players is something that he's an advocate for.
You know, I think a couple of things he says can really have weight. One, because it's him. Two, because when you have a player of his caliber just calling out the NCAA directly, that's going to hit. And then he's an example of somebody who went straight from high school to the league with great success. Not everyone's going to be LeBron James, but there are plenty of others who have done the same. LeBron also discussed a possible solution to the problem, saying, quote, "I just looked at it like the farm league, like in baseball. Or you look at pros overseas. Some of those guys get signed at 14, but they get put into this farm system where they're able to grow and be around other professionals for 3 or 4 years. Then they're ready, they hit the national team, or when they're ready, they become a pro." So I think we have to kind of really figure that out, how we can do that. Thoughts on those comments?
I completely agree. For years, I have thought that the baseball model is the best thing we have right now. I don't know if it's perfect, but I like the idea of either going straight from high school or then having to play your 3 years. I love college basketball, and I love seeing guys develop, and it does make a great tournament and a great Final Four when you have veteran guys there. But I also think that it's in what business in this country can you not start making money when you're really good at something because of your age? I think it's foolish to have age be a limiting factor for only this one thing in this country. If you were good at anything else and you were ready to start being professional, you'd be able to do that right away.
I've said before, it's ridiculous, this facade that the NCAA is about amateur integrity of athletics when it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. But this reminds you, the NBA is involved here too, because the one and done rule is essentially theirs due to the age limit. So LeBron's putting some of this on the NBA to figure out as well.
Yeah, well, hopefully his voice does lead to some changes there, as we've seen that he continues to speak out about those kinds of things. Well, LeBron James' best friend, Dwyane Wade, he turned back the clock on Tuesday night with a 27-point performance to take the heat over the Sixers, but Wade did it in honor of Joaquin Oliver. Now, Oliver was one of 17 killed in the shooting at Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida, and he was buried in Wade's jersey. Wade was so moved by this, he dedicated his season to Oliver, tweeting his photo and saying, "This is why we will not just shut up and dribble." He also said, "It's way bigger than basketball. We are the voices for the people that don't get to be heard." Wade had Oliver's name written on his shoes as he drained the game winner on Tuesday night. Wade gets it. He has a platform and influence in the face of those who would tell athletes to stick to sports and, as we heard recently, shut up and dribble. Wade is using the voice he has to make noise for those who cannot. It is bigger than basketball, and we need more voices like Wade's because his voice does make a difference.
First of all, this entire story is heartbreaking, obviously. But you hope there can be some inspiration taken from a guy like Wade, making it so clear and prominent in his display here. And, you know, there are the people that say, stick to sports, or you reference shut up and dribble, so condescending.
Disgusting.
The NBA does the opposite of that, right? And it continues to grow. So for any of those people out there saying, we don't want to hear any of this, maybe there are people like that, but you can't logically reason that with the success the NBA has, because these guys are using their platform, whether it's Wade or LeBron or Greg Popovich or Steve Kerr. I can go on and on down the line. So they don't have to be mutually exclusive. These guys can talk, and they can go out and perform on the basketball court, and the world can be a better place as a result of it.
Well, and this is how change happens, when people who have power use their influence to leverage that power. And I just can't imagine how the family of Joaquin Oliver must have felt seeing all of this. It must have been really special and really emotional for them. The United States World Cup bid for 2026 is no longer a lock, as some voting estimates now have Morocco beating the joint bid of the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. The FIFA Congress will vote on the hosting rights in June, and with the current political climates in the states, along with the U.S. Department of Justice's involvement in exposing the FIFA corruption scandal, their chances of winning are now in jeopardy. So, Robin, would it be a blow to the U.S. if they lose out on the World Cup bid?
Of course, it would be a blow. I mean, first of all, you're trying to grow soccer here in this country, and it is something that's growing, but it lags behind international soccer, let's just be honest, from talent on down. And then second of all, it's not a good look, right? That the rest of the world would say, hey, your leadership makes it feel to the point where we don't want to have our biggest event hosted in your country or with your country as a part of it. So overall, yeah, of course, it reflects poorly on the United States, and it would be a little bit of a blow to U.S. soccer.
Absolutely. Well, and keep in mind, they're not playing this summer in Russia, so the bid there was a bit of a consolation of saying, okay, we're not going to be represented in this World Cup, but we'll probably be very represented in the next World Cup, and it'll have the spotlight on the U.S. and Canada and Mexico there as well. So it's not good for U.S. soccer, but like you said, it's a horrible look for the U.S. in general, with the political climate being what it is. And I can't blame people for not wanting to come here when the current leadership has spoken about them the way that they have.
Moving on to American football, the mystery surrounding a catch may finally be near its end, as the NFL Competition Committee is discussing how to tweak the rules this offseason, with the possibility of eliminating the going to the ground element, which would have made the infamous Des Bryant and Jesse James incompletions catches. They are also apparently discussing changing defensive pass interference to a 15-yard penalty rather than a spot foul. Do you agree with these possible rule changes?
Absolutely. I cannot say enough how thankful I would be to see the catch rule change. It makes sense to me that if you catch the ball, it's a catch, right? I don't want to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about the pass interference penalty, because I really like this change. I think the college rules work well. Now, I understand the argument that doesn't that give an advantage to the defense? Just knock the guy down and then you don't have to worry about that. But that's assuming that it would be a catch anyways, or a touchdown anyway. So I think to give the advantage so much to an offense to just chuck the ball down the field and have, say, an 80-yard penalty is absurd. I think 15 is fair, and I think that it just seems to make things a little bit more fair. And if you are concerned with that becoming a little bit unfair, then add a flagrant penalty for a guy who clearly tackles somebody with a path to the end zone.
Yeah, I think that's the other aspect of it. I totally agree. The penalty as is way too punitive, where a little ticky-tack foul downfield can lead to a 50-yard gain. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But I do think there might need to be an excessive pass interference or some sort of distinction to prevent. It's like in basketball, the clear path foul, right? To prevent somebody just tackling a wide open receiver to prevent a touchdown, because you'd much rather give up 15 yards. As far as the catch goes, duh. They had to fix the catch rule. I mean, we see guys, they basically have to put the ball in a safety deposit box and bury it in a time capsule and then get it out 15 years later for it to count as a catch. We can't treat every review as a Zapruder film sort of deal.
Oh,
so, of course, they have to address the catch rule. And
yeah, I'm so tired of watching those reviews for like, oh my goodness, 20 minutes every game.
At least maybe they're making some progress. Robin Lundberg here with the front office's Jeremy Wu for another draft spotlight, as this time we focus on Duke's Marvin Bagley III. Of course, Bagley, a big man in the KG Bosch mold, perhaps, and he's put up monster numbers, Jeremy, but he's taken his share of criticism, and Duke played well in his absence. Could he be one of those guys who actually makes more of an impact at the pro level than college?
I think it's possible. I mean, he's been really good. Like, not to discount what he's done. You know, I mean, he's getting a lot of like 18 double-doubles. But I do think there's something to be said, just with the way Duke's team is set up this year. You know, they're playing a short rotation. They have a lot of bigs, not a lot of floor spacing. And so you're playing Bagley and Wendell Carter together. But it's not like the perfect ideal fit. And I think in the NBA, you know, you put shooters around Bagley, let him kind of roam around the inside. I think I could get better.
So if he has that NBA success, what do you think is the most translatable skill that will give it to him?
Yeah, I think for him it's just his ability to generate easy baskets. Whether it's on the offensive glass or going up to get the ball, get a lob. He's got a good left hand, doesn't really have a right hand yet. The thing with Bagley too is he reclassified going into the season, so he should be a high school senior right now. So that's something that has to be taken into account when you think about his development. NBA team scouts view him as in the very early stages. So he has things to work on, particularly defense. But there's still, I think, a lot of long-term potential just with what he does already do well.
Do you think defense is his biggest weakness at this moment?
Yeah, without question. I think there are times this season where he sort of looked lost, whether it's trying to defend the pick and roll. I think he can defend in space. He hasn't always looked like he's wanted to, but he's certainly athletic enough to do that. And it's just a matter of putting him in a situation, coaching him up. So this is his first time trying to fit in, and Duke is also playing zone a lot. So those are all factors in terms of his adjustment. It's going to take a little bit of time. You
get distracted having to slap the floor and all that stuff with Duke.
Right.
All right. When you're surveying the NBA landscape, which team do you say, hey, he'd be a perfect fit for?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think you could look at a team like Phoenix. There are a lot of teams that need bigs. And it's really going to depend on how the lottery shakes out. But I do think there's a sense that he kind of is falling down a little bit behind this top tier of guys, whether it's Ayton and Luka Doncic. And he's sort of in that next group for me. There's guys like Mo Bamba who can also fit. So it's it may not come down to which team really needs him, but more how the draft falls, in which order the bigs go, because there is a glut of big guys sort of at the high lottery.
Well, make sure you check out Jeremy Wu in the front office for the latest on your NBA draft needs, and we'll be back next week with another Draft Spotlight. Here with Planet Football's Luis Miguel Echegaray for a preview of the MLS season. Now, the approach of the MLS seems to have changed a little bit. The average signing age within the league this offseason dropped from 27 to 22 years old. Why are we seeing such an influx of young South American talent entering the league? Because to me, this seems like a much better approach.
Yeah, I think it's a much better approach. And to be honest, I think it's something that should have happened a long time ago. Because what happened is when David Beckham arrived to the league in 2007, he also basically cultivated this idea that aging stars from Europe should also be represented in each club in order to promote the brand. But as a result of that, as you said, the average age of players coming in grew and they became older. But now what's happened, and partly thanks to Miguel Almirón and Atlanta United last season, teams are realizing that there is potential and value in South America. You have players that are 19, 20, 21 years old that have played first team matches for so many years that can come to this league and not only help it, but develop the name and the brand of the club.
Of course, there are different clubs, different levels, European leagues, all over the place. We talk about different entities when it comes to soccer. And in the past, maybe the MLS was considered a tier below. Where would you say the MLS is right now, quality-wise?
I think MLS is growing. I think for many seasons, I would kind of compare it to, between the Championship and League One in England. But I think that now MLS is getting closer and closer to pushing even more to the Championship style level. Now, listen, there's a lot of things that's still missing from MLS. No, I'm not saying that it's a perfect league. In fact, I think technically there's still a long way to go. But this kind of revelation and this kind of movement of South American talent coming in, and coaches too, coaches like Tata Martino, Patrick Vieira, who have names and reputations that come into this league now are going to help it. So I think in about 5 years, 5 seasons, you're really going to see a league that is a real player in the transfer industry, not just within North America and South America, but Europe as well.
Now, there was a lot of movement this offseason. Which team do you expect to live up to expectations? Which team do you expect to falter?
I think I'm going to go with Atlanta United for this season. Atlanta United did a lot of work last year in its first season already. They made the playoffs, obviously, Miguel Almirón being the best newcomer of the year, best team of 2017. He was a member of that. But this offseason, they got Ezequiel Barco, broke the transfer fees from Argentina. They have Joseph Martinez, Miguel Almirón, Ezequiel Barco, and now also Tata Martino, one of the best managers in the league, probably if not the best, now has a second season where he understands the opposition better. Atlanta United is a team that's definitely ready to not just make it to the playoffs, but win the whole thing. Somebody that really disappoints, and I think is not going to do that great, is, I'm sorry, Philadelphia Union. I don't think in the offseason they did much. David Accam came to the team, but that's it. I'm a big fan of CJ Sapong, their striker, but he can't do it all. And I just think that this is a league that if you don't move with the system, if you don't move with the development, then you're going to stay behind. And Union is an example.
All right, how about Toronto? Toronto FC might be better than they were in 2017 when they won the MLS Cup after some European signings. If there is a reason to pick against them, what would it be?
Well, Toronto, like you said, is a team to watch out for. I mean, obviously, we're talking about, the acquisitions that they had, Gregory Vandervelde that came in to replace Baitasor, who came to LAFC. Here's the thing about Toronto. They already know their philosophy. They know their system. It's very difficult to try and break them down because not only are they good individually, Josie Altidore, Jovinko, but this is a team now. Greg Vanney has made them into a collective force that they can internationally also strengthen. Now, here's the problem, though, that I think that they lost a little bit in the middle, right? One of their main players kind of like, they need to strengthen that defensive midfield. But here's the key. I think that the only way to beat Toronto is play fire with fire. If you're going to fight against Toronto and fight them and play them, you have to go at them the same way they go at you. High press, contain possession, and try and play the ball in the air, because Jovinko's just going to do you on the ground every time round. But I see Toronto going to the MLS Cup again.
All right. Lastly, can't let you go without talking about the joint U.S., Mexico, Canada 2026 World Cup bid. Realistically, could North America lose their bid to Morocco, and what would the fallout of that be?
I mean, everything is possible, right? I think one of the issues with this is obviously the recent political tensions that have been going on. I mean, I've been reading some articles from, ESPN and other places, and of course, SI about, the fact that the recent political turmoil within the United States has created tension internationally in the world of soccer, right? So basically, Mexico and Canada are now trying to push their referendum more than America. I mean, it can be a little hypocritical if you think about it because, obviously Russia, not exactly the friendliest of places when it comes to hosting other nationalities, and Qatar after that. But the voting to try and get the World Cup has now risen. There's more voters that are voting to try and make the World Cup. So if those voters are not happy or feeling good about the representation of the United States, then this could be a really big problem.
Well, it doesn't reflect well, right, that other countries wouldn't want to come here for that. What about the U.S. soccer itself? Would that have an impact? Because we're talking about how much the MLS is growing.
I think that that's going to help a lot, especially with South American influence, because one of the things that I said in my piece on Planet Football is that not only is this good for clubs in terms of on the field, but it's going to help the relationship basis between the clubs and international, like Europe, for example, or any other places. Now, if U.S. Soccer with Carlos Cordero coming in and he can implement his own philosophy and even embrace and develop a better, reputation of the U.S., he's thinking about building a new GM for the U.S. men's and a new GM for the U.S. women's, then that's going to help the matters. I think that it's all about Carlos Cordero and what U.S. Soccer does between now, after the World Cup, because I think that after the World Cup, the U.S. is going to see a new manager, and then we'll see what happens.
He's Luis Miguel Echegaray. Check him out on Planet Football. Of course, we're past the All-Star break in the NBA season, and the Golden State Warriors remain in a dead heat race to the top of the Western Conference with the Houston Rockets. Our Jared Zwerling had a chance to sit down with Draymond Green, the heart and soul of the Warriors, to discuss their title chase for the third time in 4 years. We asked Draymond about his role as the glue guy on the loaded roster.
Most importantly is just understanding that you will never get the credit and being okay with that. When you see a great band broken up, it's because one guy or one lady wanted more attention. You see great teams break up, it's because that guy wasn't really cool with being the second option anymore. He wanted to be the first option somewhere. We see it all the time. And so most importantly is just understanding that you may not get the credit, and that's okay. Because I know what I do for this team and I bring for this team and the things that I allow this team to do. And so, that's number one. Number two, it's knowing you always have to bring it. There aren't times that, games where I just get to go out there and say, I ain't got it today. No, you got to find it, and that's the challenge. It may be a game where the team is 20-44. How do you find that energy? So you're just not allowed to have bad days, and I think that may be the toughest part of it. It's not wanting attention. It's not wanting to score more points. It's having to bring it every single day and knowing that You know, everyone's going to follow your energy. So whether it's good or bad, they're following your energy. Which way do you want to take the team?
Of course, in playing with all of that talent and chasing a second consecutive title, complacency can sometimes be the Warriors' biggest opponent. Draymond talked about that as well.
There's no season I've played in that felt the same. Every season kind of takes on its own life, and this season has been much of the same of that. It's kind of taken its own turn. You know, for us, you know, coming into this season, it's kind of like, hey man, we need to do everything we can to stay healthy. We need to do everything we can to stay fresh and get ready for the playoffs. You realize the things that's going on in that season, so maybe you're not clicking as much as you once were. How do you get back to that point? You know, how do you stay hungry? You know, I think in life, complacency is something that happens with everyone, no matter what field of work you're in, whether it's basketball, whether it's a journalist, whether it's, you know, a CEO of a company. Complacency is always going to start to take place. How do you overcome that? And for us, we definitely have had some complacency throughout this season. And that's the joy of it, of overcoming that complacency, getting back to the drawing board, getting back to the basics, and always remembering how hard it is to win in this league. And I think that's kind of been the theme of this season, and I like it. I love where we are.
But perhaps the most intriguing story that has carried through the Warriors' dominant season has been the ability of James Harden, Chris Paul, and the Houston Rockets to keep pace thus far. Draymond had some choice words for his team's newest rival.
I wouldn't necessarily say a slap in the face because we weren't kind of going like, hey man, we need to go into All-Star break #1. Like, it's just not something that you talk about. But it was, I mean, it's different, you know, not being in the first spot now and saying that. You know, no one's up in flames about it. No one's, hey man, we got to get back to the #1 seed. Like, whatever seed we end up, we'll figure it out. You still got to go win games on the road if you're going to win the series, more often than not. It's never a guarantee that we're going to play the Rockets. You know, we have such a long ways to go, and you know, if we are to meet up with the Rockets, it'll be in the conference finals. And there's so many good teams that we'll have to take down to even get to that point, and the Rockets as well. So. You just got to focus one day at a time, one game at a time. Once you get to the playoffs, one series at a time, and maybe we end up playing the Rockets. And you know, I like our chances no matter who we play. But we do know that they're a threat. They've added some great pieces, and as it's been, you know, highly publicized, that team is built to beat us. Noted. Great. We'll see y'all soon.
Draymond also dished on growing up as a kid in Michigan without access to fitness and health resources. He's now partnering with Blink Fitness to give back.
Being from Saginaw, Michigan, you know, and Blink being a very affordable gym, it registered with me because I remember growing up in Saginaw, I didn't know what a fitness gym was. Like, my school, our weight room, we had a few dumbbells and 345-pound plates and a bench press bar and like the oldest squat rack you could ever imagine in your life. And I had no idea even what a piece of cardio equipment was until I got to college. And so to think back to that, and I remember when I sprained my ankle really bad going into my senior year, I gained so much weight because I didn't have an idea of riding a bike and, you know, in my time off or none of those things. And so to be able to give back to my community as well while, you know, announcing a partnership with Blink and taking that to, you know, Detroit and eventually to Saginaw and East Lansing, you know, and all these different cities back in the state of Michigan, I'm very excited about.
We see your comments, so make sure you keep them coming on Facebook and Twitter. Here on Facebook, Ricky Ness says Draymond is very important for Golden State. I would agree with
I
that.
agree with you, Ricky.
Yeah. Randy Oni says NCAA corrupt. No. And Anita Moton says 2 different sports when it comes to NCAA and the pros. But if these guys decide to go pro, they should have to pay their scholarship money back.
Oh, gosh.
You know, that touches on what LeBron did at the beginning, which is that the agreement really isn't about the education there. The agreement is, hey, you come play basketball and help our basketball program, not about the education. So
these schools have plenty of money, and these kids do not.
we'll be back tomorrow here on SI Now Live, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time. In the meantime, you can go to @SI Now Live on Twitter for the latest videos and updates.